you became captain yourself, which is our second photograph. You with I think it might be the RCB game. You're with Virat in this picture. But I got the impression, even while you were at CSK, that there was a part of you that wanted to be captain, and that couldn't happen at CSK. So was it almost that unless the bird flies its nest, it cannot become captain?
See, it's quite an interesting debate, Harsha. For me, I have never thought as leadership as some sort of a title. For me, any good leader would be able to do his roles to the T and actually fit into the impression of the team, which I was able to do for a large part of my time at CSK. And for some reason or the other, I think the retention didn't happen at CSK because Suresh was going to be retained, MS was going to be retained, and I think it was always going to come down to between me and Jaddu. And because of the package that Jaddu gave, him being the extraordinary fielder that he is, and the utility that he gave, and probably not being able to get him at the auction, I think CSK let go of me into the auction. But like you rightly said, I think unless you go out and fly your own journey, you'll not be able to learn a lot more. I went out, became Kings 11's skipper. I think the journey was very enriching. I learned a lot more about myself, about leadership, about what CSK was, about what I was able to imbibe. And I think I grew as a limited overs or white ball cricketer being there at Kings 11. The larger responsibilities. I could never bowl, whenever I wanted to bowl. I had to bowl whenever the situation dictated me to bowl. I had to make tough decisions. I had to, there was no way that I could imbibe MS's style into what Kings 11 was, because it was not going to fit in as a glove. But I think running the course, if you had the leadership abilities, like you said, the bird has to fly outside the nest and actually be able to search for answers and eventually try and see and fit into a glove wherever you have.
Several times, a leader's leadership style is an extension of his playing style. Sometimes you can end up expecting from others what you expect from yourself, and your thinking's never been like this. Your thinking's been like this, right? You've always been lateral, not even like this. You've probably been like that. Did you, when you were captain, suddenly realize, hang on, not all my players are like me. They have different strengths from strengths that I have. Can I expect them to be like me? Do you go through that dilemma in spite of all the years of experience that you have picked up by them?
Harsha, I think first trait that I have as a captain, I wouldn't say captain, as a leader, is that I have a lot of empathy. And what do I think about myself as a cricketer? I think I personally think my abilities as a cricketer is not the same as some of the greatest that have walked the path. I've always believed that I have been a limited cricketer in terms of skill levels, but I've accentuated my skills because of the way I thought. But the one thing that I was very, very clear, this is how I think of myself, Harsha. What the others think can be completely different.
If this was a news channel, I would have interrupted you long ago. The moment you said, I think of myself as a limited cricketer, we would have seen my headline coming up there. But complete the story about your leadership. I still interrupted you. What the hell?
What I believe, when I look, let's just, I just elaborate because you cut me there on the question. If I compare myself to Ravindra Jadeja, okay, just to give it a broader perspective. Ravindra Jadeja is one of the most talented, naturally born cricketers that one can ever find. Okay, he's got an action that's very simple. He's got physical ailments and bodies that enable him to play his cricket in a certain way. He is a natural athlete. His batting skills are very natural. For me, everything is acquired. It's natural for me. Everything is acquired for me. I know I'm not saying anybody else works less harder or more harder than me. That's not where I'm getting. But I actually know the journey that I've been through. One day I will be able to put those things into play and put it out there about the journey I've gone through. But every time I took 2 steps in my life, I've been pushed 4 back. For someone, if I pushed forward as a bowler when I was a club cricketer, I've been pushed back saying he's not physically great. He's not a great athlete. He's not the greatest of fielders. So I had to work incredibly hard. When I pushed 2 zones up, then people actually spoke about how I was an overthinker. Because unless and until I overthought and put myself out there, there is no way I'm going to pull my detractors from thinking about what I had. So it's pretty much about, like, there is a famous quote that Anil has made, where he said, every time, for me, I've always been a cricketer who had to prove people wrong. For me, it's every time it's been about people's opinions. I've had to contend with people's opinions. I've had to contend with my limitations. I've had to push myself forward. I've had to earn my, I mean, when I say earn my bread, had to earn my stage, you know. Even getting the stage at CSK was a large encapsulation of the journey that I had to go through. But coming back to what you had asked, the leader, I had a lot of empathy for cricketers. The moment I took over the leadership of Kings 11, I knew I had an explosive team, but I knew what I had to contend with, you know, the limitations of my players. I knew what they could deliver. I knew what they couldn't deliver. And one of those most striking points as a captain moving franchisees and seeing leadership styles very different. Because when you talk about leadership style, it doesn't start and end with the captain alone. It starts up down from the franchisee. What the owners think, who they put as, who they give the responsibility to run the team, a CEO, a coach, a support staff around the coach. All these people form a part of the leadership. I cannot just go out there and do what I have to do, which is one thing that CSK I thought did phenomenally well. You know, the owners were never out there. The owners, in fact, me being a part of CSK, I've never seen the owners. You know, or I've never seen the owners come to me and speak about cricket. It was all MS Dhoni, and that's
wasn't like that at Kings.
Every team's DNA is very different, Harsh.
Yeah, true. True.
You know, when I went into Kings, I wanted to get the owners along. I wanted to get everybody along. The journey at Kings I knew was going to be very different. So it's not about comparing two teams and putting things out there. It's about understanding the DNA of the particular franchise. You know, CSK has a story of success to ride along. Kings 11 has a story of being very indifferent every year to run along. You know, so the DNA of the team needs to be rebuilt. You need to have stability at the top. That's exactly what I tried to achieve. And to a large degree, there is a core group there, even at Kings 11 today, that can take this team forward. You know, take the franchisee forward. But I believe the DNA of a particular franchisee drives the results of the team. When Rohit was at Deccan Chargers, I think Mumbai went all out, deciding this is the man we will piggyback along as our leader for the future. They picked him, got Ricky Ponting to ride along with him, and Rohit learnt on the job. Rohit was a natural leader. He had the understanding of the game.
KKR did that with Gautam as well.
Correct. And KKR did the same. I mean, Gautam was a leader. I mean, I played under Gautam for the Indian team as well for a large extent. So these are DNAs of the team that are being formed. Unfortunately, when people look at it, they look at it from a perspective of captain, leadership. No, it's a larger encapsulation of the DNA of the team. The captain needs to work on the DNA of the team. MS, whatever said and done, was very sure about how the DNA of the team needed to be, and it surrounded himself, his thought processes, and the franchisee was very supportive of it. In fact, the side that CSK had, 2008 and 2009, we didn't win the championship. But 2010, it looked like all was done. But that DNA that MS carried about himself, about the responsibility of how he put himself in the front, it changed everything in the third.
You did a lot of very unusual things at Kings, and I'm talking personal as much as for the team. The odd day you'd come into bat at number 3, on number 4, try and play a different role for yourself. What intrigued me was the attempt at bowling leg breaks, for example. And it's something I always wanted to ask you as a thinking cricketer, that T20 has in the recent past been dominated by wrist spin. And one of the reasons attributed to that is that wrist spin can challenge both edges of the bat. Whereas the finger spinner would be challenged to some extent, and that's why the carom ball, the one that's going away. What's your thought on finger spinners in T20 cricket? And therefore, why were you trying to bowl that?
See, I think there are two questions in isolation, Harsha. The first, I'll answer the first question first. Why attempted leg spin? A lot of people might draw comparisons to saying I was probably competing with the wrist spinners in the team, which is not the case. And I never saw anybody as competition in my life, and I would like to take my life forward that way. Second, why I attempted that was not new, because the first time I bowled wrist spin in an IPL game was way back in 2010. It's not today. But I believe wrist spin and the ability to bowl everything possible around it, to have everything, is the way T20 cricket will move forward. People with multi-dimensional utility skills who can not just challenge two edges of the bat, but to be able to provide different lengths, different speeds, different release points, different balls, and different ways of expressing themselves are the people that will remain relevant in this game as this game moves forward. There are two reasons to why I think that is the way it will go forward. The quality of the pitches, the quality of the bats, and the unbelievable ability or the unbelievable potential this game has opened out to batsmen. Once upon a time when batsmen thought about challenging a deep fielder, he always succumbed to it. He felt, I cannot clear him and hence I will take a much more conservative option. Now with these bats and the accentuated belief in power, in training, in the way they eat, in the way the wickets are being made, and the number of good balls they hit out of the ground gives them the ability to think, anything in my arc, I can hit it out of the ground maybe 11 out of 10 times. So I think the third factor is the biggest factor why you should have everything else to be able to push the batsman on the back foot. You should be able to keep the batsman in dilemma. And this is the answer to why I attempted wrist spin completely. I wanted to see if I can do it, and I was quite successful. In fact, I've tried different actions for different things, different bowling requirements of mine, and I've learned from it, and I finally want to bring everything together, which I'm very close to.
I know at one point I almost wanted to ask you, what is your action, Ashwin? But that's for a separate day. That's for a separate day. Because you see, even among finger spinners, there's a left arm spinners. Maybe because they can hit that spot outside the right-hander's leg stump and close it up there. What's the future? Suppose there's an 18-year-old finger spinner that you see, and you say, "Oops, this kid's good," but he wants to play T20 as well, like everyone else must. What do you tell a young finger spinner? Because there's such few right arm finger spinners in T20 cricket.
That was really a part of the second part of the question. You asked me, do you think because they challenge both edges of the bat? No, Harsha, it's not. One, maybe if you're not picking the googly of the wrist spinner, that's a problem. That's one part of it. But which you can mask even as a finger spinner. You can bowl an arm ball, you can bowl a carom ball. There are so many options even at the disposal of the finger spinner. But what I think it is because the randomness in the length that a wrist spinner can bowl is what throws the challenge. I feel if you put the red ball in a wrist spinner's hand and ask him to be accurate enough 6 out of 6 balls, which is the demand of Test cricket, he will find it tougher. And when you put the same white ball in his hand in a T20 game, and the wrist spinner sometimes I feel is not accurate enough of landing the ball in the same position every single time. He's got so many differences naturally in terms of bowling a wide line and a varied length. Sometimes a bad ball is probably the best ball in a T20 game, which I've always believed in. If you put a field, let's just say if I put a mid-on up for a right-hander and put deep mid-wicket and deep square leg, the batsman knows that I cannot err on the length of fuller side. So he could be leaning back foot and smash me over mid-wicket for a 6. But with the wrist spinner, you can't quite do that. The wrist spinner might end up bowling a full ball and york you because of his lack of accuracy that he possesses, not having played enough red ball cricket.
You make a very valid point, because look at the top wrist spinners in the game, even starting with Rashid. You look at Rashid and Mujib, I guess to some extent they've not played that much Test cricket, but look at Imran Tahir, Adam Zampa, some of these good white ball wrist spinners. They don't have careers in Test cricket, so I'll concede that. But I've been waiting to ask you about your biggest strength, which is being a Test match finger spinner, where you've charted a new course for yourself, and that's our third photograph, the 350th wicket, fastest to 250, fastest to 300. Now challenging the guy you thought was a genius and getting to 350 on par with Murali. It's been quite a journey, this finger spin in Test match cricket. Was it your variation? Was it control? What is it about bowling red ball finger spin?
Asha, for all the I used to endure when I started playing Test cricket about how I tried too much and I was not bowling the ball repetitively again and again. I was trained and endured the hardship at first class level by W.V. Raman to be able to hit the top of the bat every time I bowled a ball. The accuracy in length, the accuracy in line, which he kept challenging me every day at the nets. And that's exactly where my subconscious mind trained itself to do repetitions at will at different stages of my career. And being a finger spinner, I've always felt that accuracy is something that you can bank upon. Accuracy was a given, but the most important trait that I possessed was the enormous amount of confidence that I had I could dislodge anybody. And the second important trait that I have is I can set my own fields and be accountable for my fields. I I want to take you back to the previous question that you had asked me about what is a journey for an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old good off spinner. If you can actually be extremely aware of what you can deliver and set your fields according to what you want to deliver and take accountability for it, I think you'll be a great spinner across formats. It doesn't matter which format you're playing in, but the whole essence of cricketers having to take accountability for what they want to do or what they are going to do is the biggest trait that's going out of the window as times go by.
You know, I didn't want to interrupt, but you made such an interesting point about setting the field. Because I remember talking to Prasanna all these years ago. He said, what do I have? He said, when I'm challenging a batsman, I have two weapons to challenge a batsman. The ball that is in my mind and the delivery of that ball, and the field that I set. Do you tell young players what kind of field do you want? Because so many times the captain says, ye fielder, dalo. Even MS has done that sometimes, isn't it? He set the field for Kuldeep and all these and said, bol now.
I'd like to differ with you, Harsha. I think MS is someone who gives you the choice to be extremely autonomous.
Just you or everybody?
He needs to. Any captain needs to know that you will take accountability for the fields you set. Look, the last thing I want is somebody not having a short fine leg and coming and bowling a ball on the pads as a captain. You know, it makes you look like a joker in all countries. So if MS or any captain knows that you can take a field and be accountable for it, he will obviously give that to you. And unless and until it's a battle of being ego driven, every captain will give you that. And sometimes that's why I feel it's very important to have a relationship with the captain where he understands you as a cricketer inside out and be able to allow you to be autonomous for it. So the interesting thing that I discover even at first class cricket level nowadays, Harsha, I played quite a bit of first class cricket in England and also in Tamil Nadu over the last couple of years, quite a bit, maybe not in massive numbers, is that none of the spinners, especially the spinners, I can understand the fast bowlers to a certain extent because I believe fast bowlers need to be mad in order to take up that profession first.
I agree.
You need to earn your bread every single day being a fast bowler. It's a cruel job. But for spinners, so many spinners don't take accountability for the fields for the fear of not being able to execute it. And I think it goes back to the way they've been practicing over the years. They've not practiced with purpose every single day. The coaches haven't questioned them about what fields they want. Even when they want to put a slip in place. I'm sorry, Harsha, I'm saying this to you. A lot of cricketers actually get spoiled listening to commentary. Because a lot of commentary is storytelling. There is a bit of fascination about it when people go on commentary and say, that is defensive. You must have a slip in position. But when you say that, you're bordering on the line of so many million kids out there listening to you, wanting to put a first slip in place against the odds of what the pitch is giving and against the odds of what the batsman is playing like. These are things that have gone out of the window. Either people are so rudimentary and monotonous about having certain fields, or they are not having the freedom to have a field and being accountable for it. And it just blows my mind away because a spinner has to have control of his field and his length and line. If that is not happening, the spinner is not even a spinner in my books.
Do you sometimes look at 350 and say, have I got 350? Do you allow yourself to pat yourself on the back from time to time?
I mean, this is not just for the choice of words that I'm choosing this, but I take more pride in the fact that I've won a lot many more test matches and series for my team than I've lost for them, rather than thinking about the wickets. Because a large part of my career, whenever I picked the ball, I felt the entire weight on my shoulders of saying, look, I need to take this game home, you know. But over the last couple of years or 3 years, I've got some great company. Ishant Sharma has been in his prime, you know. He's bowled unbelievably well. Mohammad Shami has come to the fore. Umesh Yadav has done his job. Jaddu has actually been splendid, you know. Yeah. Sometimes when there are choices to make between me and Jaddu, it ends up that Jaddu plays a lot more than I do right now. And in a lot of cases, it's justified because he's batting beautifully at this point of time. But keeping all that aside, I should be happy for the fact that I have bowlers that I'm competing to play for a spot. Yeah. All I need to do is to keep this healthy environment going, is to keep myself in the prime of form and be bowling at the best that I can.
When you play away, is there a difference in mindset? versus playing at home? I'm just curious to know, because those tracks will be different from here. Your role is maybe different as one spinner with three fast bowlers. Do you think differently?
No, Harsha.
Or do you have to?
Initially, for the couple of till about 2013-14, I think I had this very concrete block thinking that wherever I go, whatever game it is, I'll pick up wickets. And the only way I'll pick up wickets is by spinning the ball hard and trusting my ability of the game, which I think all raw cricketers do when they are new into the game. But once 2015 dawned upon and I had learnt my journey, learnt my art a little bit more, I think I've been a far better bowler whenever I've gone abroad. That's one.
I agree.
And two, I think a lot of picking wickets abroad for a spinner has to happen. When I say it has to happen, there are a lot of variables that come into play. Sometimes it could be good catching. Sometimes it could be the partnership with who you're bowling. Sometimes it could be the number of lower order wickets you can pick. I think that's one thing Anil Kumble did really well. He picked up good lower order wickets because of the flipper that he had, and that's something I've given a lot of thought to. And going forward, that's another thing I would say I've got better playing county cricket, because I get a lot of wickets. I mean, obviously Test cricket is a different kettle of fish, but when I play county cricket, I know how the wickets fall. It doesn't fall in heaps. You need to be able to bowl those overs to get there. You need to be able to be really fit to be able to bowl those effective overs for a longer period of time. You need to be able to, in all honesty, you need to be bowling in the right times to pick wickets, Harsha. That's what bowling abroad means.
How frustrating were these last two tours for you? Because on both tours, you bowled beautifully in the first test in England and you bowled beautifully in the first test in Australia. How frustrating were those tours given the way they started and the way they ended? I know there was an injury, but how frustrating was it? I mean, I remember it might have been the second test or the third test. You came in and bowled the first over that you bowled. I was doing commentary with Graham Swan. And he just looked and said, but he's not well. He's not fit. So that's a separate issue though. How frustrating was it the way it started and the way it ended?
Harsha, I've gone through it. So today, I think I'm in much more deeper understanding of myself, and I'm able to make sense of what's happened around me, make sense of how my body has let me down. I was deeply disgusted with the way my body was letting me down. But what hurt me more was the fact that people were actually speculating whether these injuries happened. They were speculating about the injuries, and there was a train of thought about why these injuries happen abroad, and that kind of hurt me so much, because in Birmingham when I bowled, there was enough evidence to show how much of a better bowler I was, and how much I was in control of my art, and how much I was able to express myself. But the one thing that I was continuously dragging myself upon was to try and, if I had a chance, I would have pulled my soul out of my body and killed this ball. That's how disgusted I was. And if there is one thing that I would pride myself upon, like I said, the limited ability earlier on that I believe that I possess, is the fight that I have. I am a proper street dog, Harsha. If you push me down on the ground and shoot me and then kill me with a knife and stab me, I will still wake up for a fight. And that's, thinking back now, I feel, this is a very honest, freewheeling thought that I get. Should I have been more smart about myself and protected myself? I even feel, should I have gone into the game at Southampton? I went into the game at
Southampton. It was Southampton. Now that you tell me, it was Southampton.
I went into the game, Harsha, in Southampton, like I always have in my career. I take pride in saying how much ever scars I've received in my career, I have told myself, every time there is an opportunity that the stage is in front of you, you should take it with both hands. Never shy away from a challenge. I was maybe 70% fit, and as the game wore on, as every over that I bowled, my body was letting me down, but I never walked off the field. Okay, that's not trying to state that somebody should build a statue for me for that. No, I got into the fight knowing we were 2-1 down in the series. We could go 2-all here, and I could be a part of history, and I could be a part of one of the greatest histories written by an Indian cricket team, and I would never change that again. But there have been so many times in the past where cricketers have taken conservative approach in their lives. And is that what we want to drive into cricketers moving forward? The fear of failure being larger than the chance of an opportunity to gain success? I am not from that school, and that is something that hurt me. And in Australia, I had a grade 3 tear. And if cricketers don't understand what a grade 3 tier is, going into the second innings, Harsha, I've never opened the story up before. I'd bowled 40 odd overs. I felt something was missing. I went out there to bowl something in the evening, to try something in the evening, and I tore my abdomen. It was a sheer workload injury. It happened, and I didn't take a pill for a grade 3 tier on the day 5 until lunch, because I knew from lunch to tea could be crucial and the pill could work between lunch to tea. There was not one expression, and if you see, I was wearing glasses consistently. And when I bowled that over in Nottinghamshire with that adductor tear, tears were flowing through my eyes. It was damn painful. And despite all this, I personally think, given an opportunity, the DNA of my makeup is I will do the same mistake again, even if people vilify me for that.
Because it isn't a mistake. I mean, athletes are fine-tuned.
I'm sorry to interfere there. It was made out to be a mistake. And I'm putting it out there because I think any cricketer with the will to go out there and fight should do that in the future and not take a conservative approach because they can save themselves for another day. That's not how I'm built, and that's not how a sportsman should be built.
No, but sportsmen become elite sportsmen. Difference between an elite sportsman and an ordinary sportsman is that he is fighting the odds. When the odds are thrown at him, he says, right, I'll take them, I'll back myself. And that is what is the difference between a great sportsman and an ordinary sportsman, because he challenges hurdles. And so it would not surprise me at all if someone said 70%, you say I'll play, because that is the DNA that makes people special compared to others. Do you and the other spinners talk a lot about the craft, about what you're going to do? Because no two spinners can think the same, right? You think very, very differently from most people.
I think Jaddu and I possess a very interesting relationship. We not necessarily talk about the skill so much, but we understand the pace at which the game is going and the play that needs to be made then and there. That understanding is very deep in the sense of saying who is going to relent here. We have a competition amongst ourselves of saying who is going to release the pressure. Not me, and that's how the game builds. It's a very unique way of representation. But I sometimes get a feeling it is quite unfortunate that both of us don't get to play a lot more away from home. If we could play as 5 bowlers and both of us can play together, I think we'll form a very lethal combination, even on tracks that are not very, very helpful. Because in certain passages of play in a game abroad against right-handers, Jaddu might be able to do the bottling approach, and sometimes when one sneaks in, the other can come into play. But it's just not possible on a lot of occasions. Jimmy Anderson and Broad don't play a lot together when they travel the subcontinent. But it's something that I genuinely would miss.
You have no idea what you've just said, because you've just brought me on to the one thing that when you're 50 years old, I'll still talk to you about it if I'm still around. Which is, I have a bone to pick with you about your batting. You talked about playing 5, because I saw that happen to Anil towards the end of his career, but you were always a better batsman than Anil was. There's a lot of similarities between the two of you as personalities, as individuals, about the way you honed your craft with what you had, but you were always a better batsman than him. And those numbers, I always thought Ashwin's going to be number 6, I always thought Ashwin's going to be number 6 and India will play 5 bowlers. Ashwin will enable India to play 5 bowlers. Sometimes can you almost end up thinking so much about your bowling that you underthink your batting? Kapil Dev said that once. He said it's very easy for people to say I should have batted more, but then would have bowled 30 overs.
I don't know.
Maybe I have a bone to pick with you.
Maybe
you can come hard at me if you want.
Maybe I think we'll be in a better position to pick a bone on that once my career is done. But okay. I think a lot of my sort of, so to say, dip in batting is associated to sometimes lack of opportunities in certain cases.
Fair enough.
Lack of repetition in certain cases, and I also think my body in some instances, because to prep my body to play the game and bowl those number of overs, I've sometimes had to take a look back into my batting and not be able to put the repetitions that the batting requires. But having played the county stint last year, I definitely feel my batting is getting back to where it is getting back. But I will not go down without a fight again, Harsha. I would love to make a few more hundreds in my career, and I'm not going down without a battle. I think there have been instances in the last 2 seasons where I have batted really well, made some contributions on some tough pitches, but I haven't gone on to make the pitch.
I remember Adelaide well.
Adelaide, in Cape Town, even at Johannesburg in the second test in South Africa, I've been able to make those contributions. But having played at those crucial number in 6 and had a good average in numbers, I haven't been playing at 6 consistently enough to be able to build on it. So that's something I'll try and earn back again if it's possible. Having said that, I'm definitely trying to put work into my batting. I take a lot of pride.
Yeah, because one of the things you look for from 100 yards away or 120 yards away, which is where we see the game from, and we see very little. It's amazing how little of the game we see from 120 yards away. Is the ball leaves the bat when the bat is in your hand in a very good mood. It leaves it. It's not offended.
It's like it's just a state of mind that I'd like to just point out. I think I've made one mistake with my batting in the last 12 months or 14 months, and I've allowed it to play on my head. And it's also been about some have been about people to allow it to play on my mind. When I've batted well and made runs, I've only looked at the ball and hit it and made runs. But over the last 12 to 14 months, I think I've played with an intention of not wanting to get out. I have a feeling that it can happen to cricketers at different points of time. But the one regret I have is it's not me that's played that game on me, and I've allowed something or someone else to play that game on me, and I'm deeply regretting.
We've got this bingo game that we play. We've given you 6 windows. Take a look at these 6 windows. You're in a quarantine house, right? It's not Preeti and the girls, and I heard a dog barking in the background and your parents. No, it's a different kind of quarantine house, because the quarantine house you're in, you're enjoying yourself very much. You married a feisty woman who's very good for you, which is fantastic.
In all honesty, I would say house 7, but there are only 6 houses here.
Correct. So you're not allowed 7, you're allowed 6. And if you say house 3, then I want to be peeping in the window with Buttler, Pant and Payne. Pant and Payne would be having a discussion on their own, and you and Buttler would be having...
I think I'd go into house 3.
House
3.
And what would your conversation with Josh Buttler be about? Payne and Pant can talk babysitting. That's okay.
My conversation with Josh would be not about not about justifying why I was right and why he was right and actually feeling aggrieved about it, but it would be centered more around how you'd want to differentiate cricket and life in general. Because I think sometimes for having what I did to him in that game is blown out of proportion in terms of character assassination, which is quite silly if truth had to be told, because I haven't earned a level 1 demerit point in my entire career, and what I did was what the rule is supposed to be, and I tried to put it across in as little or subtle way as saying.
That's okay. That'll just hijack this interview and get everyone talking about it, which is not my objective. But listen, young man, you still got to play cricket. Okay, I notice you're doing these blogs about great matches of the past. I don't want competition to come from young off spinners. Okay, so take your time on that.